Hi everyone, finally we reached to the final part of chapter 25, which is part 4. In this part, we're going to talk about the interest rate and how the Fed controls the interest rate. And in the end, we have a quick quiz to finish this chapter. So let's start with the Fed. So we know from previous parts that the Fed has control over the interest rate and that it can adjust the interest rate in order to change the money supply. So the Fed controls the interest rate and money supply using three tools before 2008, and those two tools are: the first one is open market operations, which refers to the purchase and sales of government bonds by the central bank. So the central bank can buy or sell the government's bonds in order to change the money supply. So, for example, if the central bank wants to increase the money supply, it would buy the government bonds, and if it wants to decrease the money supply, it would sell the government bonds. Okay, so here we have an example if the Fed wants to increase the money supply. So the central bank in this case should buy government bonds from banks, and then banks will have more reserves, and this will make banks give more loans. They will be able to give more loans, and this will increase the money supply. Okay, and the opposite also, if we want to say that the money supply should be decreased, we will say that a central bank should sell government bonds from banks, and then banks will have less reserves, and banks will not give so much loans, and this will decrease the money supply. And here we have another link between the government bonds and the interest rate. So as the Fed buy government bonds, the price of government bonds will increase, and this will decrease the interest rate. So there's a negative relationship between the price of government bonds and the interest rate. Okay, now moving to the second tool, which is changing the discount rate. So the discount rate is the interest rate that banks pay to the central bank to borrow reserves. Okay, so we know that commercial banks can sometimes borrow reserves from the central bank, and the commercial bank should pay interest to do that. Okay, so if the Fed wants to change the money supply, it can adjust the discount rate that commercial banks pay for the central bank. So, for example, if the central bank wants to increase the money supply, it should reduce the discount rate. And if the Fed wants to decrease the money supply, it should increase the discount rate. So here we have an example to increase the money supply. Central bank should reduce the discount rate, as we said. This will lead banks to borrow more easily, and this will increase the money supply. And also the opposite, if the central bank should want to decrease the money supply, it will increase the discount rate, and this will make banks borrow less, and this will decrease the money supply. Okay, now moving to the third tool, which is changing the required reserve ratio. We all know from previous parts, we talked a lot about the required reserve ratio. We said it is the minimum fraction that commercial banks should keep aside. Okay, so it is the rate of reserves that banks should keep at the central banks. Okay, so to increase the money supply, the central bank would decrease the required reserve ratio. But if the central bank wants to decrease the money supply, it would increase the required reserve ratio. Okay, here we have an example. To increase money supply, central banks should reduce the required reserve ratio. This will lead to the money multiplier will increase, and this will increase the money supply. And also the opposite, if the Fed wants to decrease the money supply, the central bank would increase the required reserve ratio, and in this case, the money multiplier will decrease, and this will decrease the money supply. So if you want to talk about it here in another way, the required reserve ratio. So when the required reserve ratio for commercial banks is really high, then it should keep like a lot of the customers' deposits aside. Then there will not be enough money or too much money to give loans or to make profits. So that's why the increase of the required reserve ratio will decrease the money supply. Okay, so we talked about before what the Fed used to do before 2008. Now we will add new tools which came after 2008 to control the interest rate, such as buying mortgage-backed securities, which are like MBS. It is like an investment that's it's like bonds, okay, but it's different. But the Fed can buy them in order to increase the money supply, and also we have buying long-term government bonds, and we also have paying small interest rate on the bank reserves it holds. Okay, so those are new tools that were added up to 2008 in order to control the interest rate. Okay, now we have a quick quiz to end this part. Assume that there's an economy in a recession and the central bank wants to increase the money supply. Okay, what should the central bank do? And the second question, why the central bank should increase the money supply? Okay, so you can pause this video and write your answers in a piece of paper, and then you can see the answers in the second slide. And let's start. What should the central bank do? Okay, so in case of a recession, the central bank would want to increase the money supply. Okay, so what should the central bank do in order to increase the money supply? First of all, the central bank should buy government bonds from banks, because as we said before, when the central bank buys the government bonds, it's going to increase the money supply, and also the Fed should decrease the discount rate, because in this case the commercial banks can borrow more from the central bank, and this will increase their loans, which will increase the money supply. And also the central bank should decrease the required reserve ratio, because as we said before, that when the required reserve ratio is decreased, the money will be the bank will be able to give more loans, and this will increase the money supply. Okay, now the second question, why the central bank should increase money supply? So like in a recession, why should the central bank increases the money supply? The central bank should increase the money supply in order to decrease the interest rate, because decreasing it will increase investment. So the central bank will increase the money supply in order to get out from the recession and go to overcome it. Okay, so the increase of money supply will decrease the interest rate, which will increase the GDP, and this will overcome recession. Okay, so this was the last part of chapter 25. I hope you had a great time and you understood all the materials, and thank you for watching.